Good to see everyone out this early. Thank you for braving the rain to be here. So the panel today is a fairly loose topic. It can be a fairly broad topic as well, but we're talking about artists, brands, and technology. I think the most interesting thing is to really try and dive into the interplay between all of those different parties. You know, when can artists, brands, and technology platforms, like at SF Music Tech, we have a lot of startups, a lot of new apps and things like that, which are heavily reliant on artists to actually use their products and take them out to market. But they're also looking to brands to try and make money for what they're doing. And then in between that, the artist is, you know, they're bringing a lot of value to the table, so how do they get paid for all of that? And so I wanted to dive into some of the dynamics between all those three, and we have some really great people representing each of those different camps and all somewhere in between as well. And so yeah, to kick off, first of all, looking at you know, how are the technology platforms working with the artists first and foremost, but then also looking at this kind of new phenomena of branded content, which we've seen really rise over the last couple of years and seems to live very natively on some of these social platforms that we're seeing. So that's the agenda. We're going to freestyle a bit as well because we haven't had so much time to prep, so it'll be interesting to see what directions we could take. I'm going to try and leave a good 15 minutes at the end to ask questions. If anyone has a really burning question they want to ask in the meantime, then like, feel free to jump in, but maybe it's best to leave it till the end and we'll let these guys have the floor for the first part. So, want to get everyone to introduce themselves and kind of also, as they introduce themselves, say which kind of area you're representing. Are you know, representing artists, brands, or technology? And where you see the kind of the biggest challenge or opportunity is for you right now. So, and we should do the Nick Adler joke at the beginning, but I'll let you guys do that.
We did it already.
It's big to be together. So yeah, I'm Nick Adler with a K. I am at the Cashmere Agency, VP of Biz Development. Also have a sister company called, we're part of a sister company called Stampede Management, and manage artists like Snoop Dogg, Far East Movement, and a list of other young hip-hop artists and legacy artists. So, you know, on the artist side, you know, Snoop is the perfect example of just the epic brand meets artist meets technology. On the Cashmere side, though, we take it to the next level, which is actually representing brands in the market, marketing these brands, and then just coming up with consulting and social media plans around these brands. So we really are at this real synergistic place between artists, brands, and technology.
My name is Nick Adler. I own the Roxy Theater on Sunset, and I also produce the Sunset Strip Music Festival. And just in the last year, opened up a company called Adler Integrated that does digital marketing, mostly in the social space, venues like Staples Center, Nokia, brands like iRock, some other festivals, and then obviously the Roxy we do as well. So for me, I'm kind of, I feel like I'm in between all of these other people. I don't represent the band and I don't represent the brand, but they usually come together in my spaces, whether it's a room or in social, so that's where I can add to the conversation.
Are you guys related at all?
We're not.
We don't know.
Maybe somewhere, way deep down. Jamie Robinson, Executive Creative Director at Pereira Nodal and Ad Agency. We specialize in a lot of branded content, so I guess I'm also kind of an in-betweener. We have a lot of great brands we work for, Intel and Toshiba, Mattel, Scrabble Games. We do Skype, we do a lot of branded content for those guys. I guess for us, the interesting thing is trying to do something that honors the brand and doing something that honors the artist, and trying to find where those we can do something that's wonderful for both parties, and coming up with a creative solution that is great for the audience too. So yeah, I guess I'm kind of in between, maybe leaning more towards the brand side representation, I guess, but I love artists too.
I'm Will Hoover, head of music at GoPro. GoPro is the sports camera turned everything camera. And I've had the pleasure of working with these two gentlemen on different projects. What we found is that the camera is being used by artists, photographers, musicians, all sorts of people. And it's being used in studios. it's being used on stage, it's being used in lifestyle pieces. And so I think in general, the interaction between the technology that we're providing and all these different avenues in which it's being used is part of what I'm here to talk about.
Cool, good stuff. So let's dive in. I mean, the first topic, you know, both established technology platforms, technology brands like Skype or Nokia, but then also new startups. Like they have to get the artists to either be using their product or endorsing their product, and go and take that out to the huge audiences that those people have. And Nick, I mean, maybe we could kick off. There's some examples where it's been like paid endorsements from someone like Snoop, but there's also been just kind of free and organic use. We were talking before about, you know, Snoop being one of the kind of the first celebrity users of Instagram. How important was that for Snoop to be seen as a kind of innovator? And how important was it for Instagram? You know, was there a significant boost because of that, like, artist usage?
Yeah, regarding Instagram, in all honesty, I think we built it, and I take full credit for it. Google it, it's real. But so basically, I think, I mean, things have changed so much, but early on, yeah, it was 100% necessary to be seen as an early adopter and to do creative things with these platforms, and that all really was around content. So I think, you know, for us, creating YouTube videos, before we cared about subscribers, it was more about putting those YouTube videos out on Twitter so people could follow us and engage, and us talking to other celebrities and that kind of stuff. Now, it's different. I mean, now there's just, you know, you have your core use platforms that you use, and it does come down to, I'll be honest, a lot of it comes down to the business. Like, if you want us to use this, what's the deal? Is there equity? That kind of thing. But ultimately, if it's an amazing thing and we know we need it, then all that stuff goes out the window, because you want to continue to build your network and, you know, really have an audience and just entertain them. And I think, you know, another good example, not to sort of, but is SoundCloud, where that was a natural use, where he was he took to it, started DJing it, putting up mixes, and then the media picked it up because it was so fish out of water to see like this big hip hop icon spinning heavy EDM and dance music. So all the media was like, wow, this is original and a great use of the platform. So I think, to your question around the business and the endorsement of it, now it's super important, and now that's really the first thing we look at is, will this platform succeed? If it does succeed, will we drive that success? And if that success is driven by us, then we feel that we should earn in the upside of that.
And I mean, in terms of like what's Snoop doing, I mean, if for all of the startups who are in the audience, who are at an early stage, they might be on kind of 0 users or 5,000 users, they're not quite at the level of an Instagram are today. How should they best approach that? Do they just make a great product and the artists will come? Should they be reaching out? And if so, should they go to people like you who are representing those artists or their agents, or is it better to go through the label and get them using the product?
It's a combination. I think you need, you know, if you're small and you got to look at your marketing, and you need your marketing person or somebody who can appreciate the music. And I think music is really the most powerful space. You know, high profile artists, but and you know, and reaching out to the labels, it works, and they want to be first too, and they want all their artists on there. Yeah, I mean, with Instagram, I'll give you a little bit of that story quickly, but basically we saw it, loved it, called this company up, went to San Francisco to meet with them. They didn't want us in their office because they were embarrassed because it was small at the time, and if we met them at a coffee shop, and in that coffee shop we liked them so much, we put them on the app, and we went to another meeting after that, and an article ran in TechCrunch, and the guy we were in the meeting with was like, "Hey, you guys, awesome use of Instagram." And we were like, "What?" You know? So, you know, they called the PR team, and the PR team released the press release, and then, you know, from that point on, you watched an explosion. So, you know, that was from us ultimately reaching out to them. But yeah, I mean, if you're a small platform and you want artists, just reach out to them. Just call them, call everybody. Now every artist has a guy who manages their social media. It's amazing. I could probably give you a list of guys who are artists online.
I'll just jump in because I think the Roxy, sometimes I look at it as both. Sometimes I look at the Roxy as an artist and kind of treat it like I'm managing this artist as the Roxy, and then sometimes I look at it as a startup. So I'm kind of have a little bit of both there, and I think it's being a user. I mean, the Roxy uses the technology. They interact with fans. They reach out to new companies. They don't do things just because we're getting a big paycheck, but there's like this opportunity to try something new. And that's really got us kind of in that early adopters phase where we were similar. We called Josh from Instagram and got into Instagram really early. They put us up as a featured user. And since we had a large base on Twitter and Facebook, we were able to move them to Instagram. Similar thing happened to Pinterest. So even if you are a startup, you have to almost treat it as a little bit of the artist mentality, like how can I get more exposure, and that might be through using some of these other tools or putting yourself out there.
And since we're going down the line, I can just add one more thing, is that if you are if you were confused or you're not sure what story, what kind of artist you would be interested in kind of promoting your new platform or getting attention towards your new platform, one of the things we specialize is looking at your brand and then looking at artists and trying to make matches between who are appropriate for your brand. So yeah, you can always go through an ad agency or branded content agency.
Yeah, I mean, Will, for your product GoPro, maybe you could just, for those who don't know it, maybe just speak for a couple of sentences on what it is. But you've had just a lot of organic usage from the artists. They're actually, this is something that helps them be interesting. So how has that helped you? And have you had to nurture that, or does it just grow organically?
Well, I think that's an awesome question. Just to start out, if you don't know the camera, it's a very small little HD, actually better than HD now camera. The Hero 3, I think, can shoot all the way up to 4K. So actually, I know it can shoot all the way up to 4K. And artists are using this as a way to create content. And I think at the end of the day, content is king. I mean, an artist like Snoop is creating incredible songs over decades of time, and I think that what a lot of those types of artists are dealing with is film crews, and film crews are artists in and of themselves, and this little camera creates essentially a new dynamic in the space of the stage, in the space of the studio, and in recording lifestyle stuff as well. So I think what we've noticed is it's been adopted very heavily. And, I think I was talking with you earlier about, putting it in the Roxy and getting live footage around it. And I've talked with Nick about working with Snoop and doing things on those ends. I've worked with the Rolling Stones, I've worked with Dave Matthews Band, but also worked with bands that aren't known yet. And I think the most exciting thing is that the camera is so affordable but so professional that everyone has an opportunity now to create killer content. And you can put it in places that a photographer can't get to. And just as a side note, I'm not saying that photographers by any means or videographers by any means are obsolete, because the art of creating the video at the end and the art of placement and the art of videography and photography is still there, but musicians can put these things with Velcro tape all around their instruments, all around the rooms, and start creating these incredible pieces that are in better than high def, and put them up online so they have a direct link with the consumer at a level that is highly professional if they have the video editing capabilities. And
then just to jump in, I mean, like kind of talking about how you're working with artists. If you're doing something with Snoop or the Rolling Stones, right, is it like, what's the kind of the benefit there? Are they using it because that helps them be interesting? But it's also really great marketing for you guys, right? So is there like, what's the consideration there?
Yeah, I think it's a a win-win relationship in that sense. I mean, I think the feedback that I got from the Rolling Stones, for example, is that they were surprised that there were even cameras on stage. They had totally forgotten about it. So all the moments that they had on stage were totally authentic. There wasn't somebody in with a big Steadicam right in their face, so they created footage that is kind of never before seen, really exciting stuff. So they get this opportunity to kind of be at the cutting edge of the technology where cameras are now turning into camera systems, and our cameras are essentially, you can put 50 of them on stage and capture all the different angles that nobody has ever seen before.
So for you guys, the pitch then to the artist is just, well, our product like helps you.
Yeah, I mean, again, back to content. It's like the Stones had never seen any of that type of footage of themselves. Yeah. So that's in their eyes also cutting edge.
Yeah.
I think just to add to that, I mean, I think Instagram and GoPro are great examples of access, and I think that's really the connection where the brand wins, is that they're giving access to something that's never been seen. And that's why Instagram works so well for artists and for venues, is because we might not think the green room of SF Music Tech is interesting, but to someone, they might never have seen the inside of what it's like loading into a venue, or what it looks like coming off a semi-truck. That's like a piece of their story, and it's just, now we're able to tell those, and from different angles.
Yeah, and so with all these different technology platforms, I mean, you're putting technology into artists' hands to create this amazing content, and that's content that's special. In times it can be very intimate, it can be highly targeted, and I think over the last year, with this the rise of social and with the rise of the use of this technology, it's given rise to branded content, and brands see this content, they're like, oh wow, okay, if the Rolling Stones are sharing an intimate moment backstage, then as a brand, how can I tap into that? And it seems like the brands, they can't just turn up on Twitter and take out a big banner advertising, or they can't, it's not as effective for them just to like buy an audience in the more traditional sense of it. So I mean, Jamie, that's kind of what you're working on. So I mean, for those who might not be, hopefully everyone kind of gets this space a bit, but can you talk a bit more about branded content and what your take on it is?
Branded content is like a whole new creative piece that it's created by a brand using an artist, and it's a kind of a merger between those two entities to create something new and exciting for the audience. And it's a space that's been really developed over the past couple of years. It's something that is really near and dear to my heart, because we've been doing a lot of it, especially in the film space. I actually started doing branded content a couple of years ago. I had forgotten, I didn't tell you, I actually did something with Adidas. I'm looking at your Adidas sweater. But I had done something with Adidas in Major League Soccer, where we had created a different song. We looked at English football culture, and we realized each of these great football teams had great chant songs, and American football teams did not. So we were like, oh crap, like how can we get people to start getting excited about being at an American soccer game? At football, soccer, English, American, sorry. And so we thought, well, let's start creating some songs for these guys that had these great chants in them, and put them in stadium. And we did that through Adidas, and it was really exciting, because we had like Bad Brains doing DC United, and like even brands that you wouldn't think would do a chant, like Polyphonic Spree did something for the FC Dallas. So it was all about getting local brands to do that. So it's kind of a merger between entertainment and branding. And I think one of the biggest tricks that we found is brands can't be, there's a fine line. You can neither be too aggressive with your brand, or else it becomes a commercial and nobody gives a shit. Or you can't, well, people don't give a shit, but they give a lot less of a shit. And it can't be free of the branding, or else it's just a film or a music video or a song. And so the audience is actually really welcomes being upfront with the fact that, hey, this is a film, a social film for Intel and Toshiba. It's going to feature the computer, but it's going to be really awesome content. It's going to be a really great movie that you can participate in. So maybe you guys will just, embrace it, and they did.
But I mean, quite often this content is quite a challenge, because you're inserting that into places where people are looking for, like other content. If you're suddenly listening to a Green Day album, and then all of a sudden you have something else, or you're watching this video and Toshiba comes along, what are the challenges of, like, how do you make that work? How do you make those two gel together? You
have to make your content really, really, really good. That's the first thing. People can get like non-branded content out in the world for free, and that's awesome. So if you're a brand and you're going to try to put yourself in the middle of this environment where people are looking to be entertained, you have to make sure that your work, your content you're putting out, is just as good, if not better, and mostly better than the stuff that they can get for free. So for brands, what's interesting is a lot of times they have to take chances. The first, I don't want to say invented, but we coined this term social film, which is basically movies that the audience can use social media to interact with. The first one we did was, they're both for Intel and Toshiba. We had done 2 of them so far. And the first was a thriller, and we locked this girl in a room. And basically she had to use her computer to try to figure out, solve the mystery of who she took her and where. And the minute the episode ended, she was on Facebook and was chatting in real time. We had a screenwriter with the audience. In order for that to be successful, Intel and Toshiba had to do content where we would lock a girl in a room, where she would be nearly naked the whole time, within the realm of taste. We actually had a camera. She was good looking, so it was okay. And so we had a camera. Like at one point, the bad guy puts a camera in the shower, so that to show her that she's being watched everywhere. Like brands have to be willing to be that brave and open up themselves to things that they wouldn't normally do in a commercial space in order for it to be successful.
And to one point to that, quality of content is so important. I 100% agree, right? Because we're so trained to watch branded content now that it just washes past us when it's really good. It's great. One other thing I think is important to that point is that I'm watching a lot happen, and we're doing is consistency with brands. So like, kind of a flashback to the Ed Sullivan Theater, the Texaco, or the Milton Berle Texaco Theater, right? Where it's like early cable or early television. Just a brand just owned it. It was no apologies. Like, yeah, you're watching the shit I paid for, so enjoy it and buy Texaco, right? So I think that's happening again now, where it's totally fine for a brand to go, hey, this is the Nestle R. Kelly hour, and people are like, oh, cool, Nestle, R. Kelly makes
terrifying.
sense. Right?
But
I was just gonna say, this all comes from the downfall of the record business, because obviously all of these brands are all popping up and connecting with artists because the artists don't have any money anymore. And I think it was either Quantance or Flom, I think it was about 10 years ago, actually brought together a group of advertisers and a group of managers and kind of kicked this whole thing off. And that was about 10 years ago, and it was right when they realized they weren't getting tour support and they weren't getting the video budgets, and they were in a place like, okay, well, where's the easiest place to go get money? And so that is kind of where this conversation started. It's gotten so much better now, and it's not just putting a banner up behind someone's band, but really getting integrated with what they're doing.
Yeah, but I mean, does it mean that, does that put the artist's creativity and their art at jeopardy? Like if they're having to do something to say what the brand wants them to say?
No.
It can't. It can't, because then it's not authentic for the audience either. I mean, one thing we I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Were you on top? I'm sorry.
All right, just finish.
No. I was gonna say, we actually work with Nick Adler, Nick Adler over here in Snoop, and we did something for Jawbone to launch their Jambox in Brazil, and it was creating a song with Brazil's biggest rapper, Marcelo D2, and they basically composed it over the product, which also happens to conference calls, right? So they've composed this kind of over the speaker. They composed a track. They weren't in the same studio, but they composed it over the product, and we shot a video and did a behind the scenes video of it. Snoop's integrity was not at all in jeopardy. That was right.
Well, it wasn't exactly pocket like it's hot, but basically, I want to go essentially, yeah, it's the quality of the product. So yes, a lot of musicians are doing branded content that we watch and go, that is ridiculous and it was absurd.
Yes.
Yeah, sometimes it's done incredibly seamlessly and we just appreciate it, and you go, oh, I was talking about this earlier and some people disagree with me, but I thought the Linkin Beck thing that just came out is awesome. And I think, you have a different opinion a little bit, right?
Can you describe that?
I don't know if anybody's seen it, but I just kind of came across my Facebook feed, and it was Beck performing at some massive auditorium with a gospel, and he's redoing David Bowie's, the classic David Bowie song, and I just thought it was beautifully executed, and I watched the whole piece, and there was a very subtle Linkin branding, and I remember saying, that's amazing that Linkin would do this, and it looked like it was expensive, and then I was reading The New Yorker, and there's the Beck Linkin insert, I'm saying, okay, it's starting to get planted in my brain. And I really, on the reverse of it, I really respected Lincoln, a car I would probably never drive, let alone even forgot they're in the market. And I'm like, that's cool. Like, I support them. I think they're doing good things in the spirit, I think, of what a BMW has been able to do. But I think you have a different opinion on the whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, controversy. I haven't seen the whole thing, to be very honest, but I did look at it on my phone on the way in, because actually Nick was just telling me about it. My only concern is, and it really depends on what Lincoln does with it, is I would prefer if Lincoln had done something where the car had been more front and center in some capacity. One of the big great granddaddy of branded content probably is the BMW films. I don't know if you guys remember that from the thing. What was fucking brilliant about that was the car was there the whole time. It was an integral character to the whole thing. It was, and so you couldn't remove it. It wasn't just so-and-so paid for this. It was about that product and how badass that product was at getting Madonna and Clive Owens to places, you know? So that's my only concern with the BMW thing, and the Lincoln thing, and I only saw for a second, they made Lincoln back better, was that it felt ancillary to the product, or and it was more Beck show, but maybe they're gonna come back and round it out in a better way.
But this is where it lives right here. This is the artist, and then you more represent the brand. So you want to see your brand in there, and you want to make sure that it's your artist front and center, and then maybe he got out of a Lincoln and then went to perform.
Yeah,
so
possibly.
It's always kind of finding the balance between these two where it works. And what I was going to add earlier was that what we're seeing now is we're seeing brands actually elevate some of the artists, and I think that that's a nice change that we're starting.
Because I was going to say, I mean, we've established that, you know, you can get a big artist, you can, whether it's the Beck example or a Snoop example, you can do something that resonates with them creatively, it works for the brand. Obviously there's times when that can go horribly wrong, but from and I'll address that I'll address that in a minute, but I mean, does it really scale? I mean, for a smaller artist, yeah, great, if you're big and you've got a big audience, you're probably making money anyway. For a small artist, how do you benefit off this new kind of phenomenon, and where's the money?
Well, it's almost like a label. I mean, it's somewhat like A&R. I mean, if Will goes with GoPro to South by and he does something where he's filming these young bands and then he's going to put them on their site and it's going to get pushed out, he's spending his money to take an unknown band, and he's getting that he knows bands and he knows young bands, and the band's getting a full production from Will. So it does go both ways, and that's what bands can't look for that label. It's not that ultimate $350,000 5-record deal. It's not around, so they might as well go see, okay, Blue Microphones, maybe I can do something with them and get my name in here. And then so young bands, I see it all the time in the Roxy, they're using the smaller brands to kind of work themselves up to the next brand and the next brand, and then they have enough going on that they can pull in that label, manager, etc.
And I think it's fair to say something about user-generated content, in the sense that bands are really generating a lot of that right now, and I think that that's what gets discovered by brands, and if it's clever enough, it can fly on its own. And that can be their property, and they can own it, you know.
A brilliant example of that is OK Go, probably the best one. And actually, they were a part of my Adidas project as well for Chicago. But they're a band who has completely taken their own videos and turned it into an entire industry. I mean, people,
it's like a science project.
It's amazing. I mean, but it's because of their creativity. Yeah. They're able to do that, and they're a dream situation.
I mean, a good example, I think, for me personally, is actually the Roxy with a lot of early dubstep stuff. What I was hearing coming from Scion.
Yeah.
And was the Scion, like Scion was, I thought for years, the way they really focused specifically on music, but not on commercial artists, but on like they go really into like hashtag music, like metal dubstep or whatever it is. So, and I see, like, when I go by the Roxy, there's like a line down the block for every one of those shows.
Yeah, kids that I don't think we could have ever gotten to And I think it also has to do with their demo. They know who they want buying their cars. They know who that is, and they go just like any ad agency, and they search the demo, and they go, you know what? How do we find this? You know what? Those kids are listening to dubstep, or they're going to listen to dubstep in the next 3 years. And they were doing every single dubstep artist played the Roxy. With 4 or 5 years ago, maybe even 5 years ago, and there was a line down the street, and I didn't even know what it was, other than the fact that things fell off the ceiling and the whole entire foundation of the Roxy shifted. So if you ever go there, some of the doors don't work because of Scion.
It's interesting, like Scion now, like I watch them, they're heavy in metal now.
Yeah, they give away black socks is one of their like big giveaway things at the shows, and every kid gets a pair of black Scion socks. And we sat around going, why would you do that? Well, when you're whatever, you're sitting at home and you're sitting with your friends and you got black Scion socks. It's intimate. It doesn't get closer than socks. So
let's taking this from the offline world of socks.
The Scion thong.
I just wanted to add one
I didn't get one of those.
Yeah, go on.
I think that also it's like knowing your audience too, right? I think that the audience now is trained to social media, and so everybody's looking around. They're not necessarily looking at MTV, they're looking for interesting content, like Nick was saying about the kind of access to artists. I think that since the CD's gone, it's just essentially a coaster now. Artists are getting their fans to come to them by providing content that is unique. Like, let's say John Mayer opens up his guitar case and tunes his guitar. For a John Mayer fan, that's really interesting, and that's something that if you have cameras parked around him and he forgets about them, you get a really authentic moment. But I think you can also, orchestrate it in other ways. But I think what I've been seeing out there is that all these different bands are now starting to become their own mini little publishing houses and their own, social media houses and their own brands. And so now all of a sudden you kind of have that fulfillment of the original, prophecy, so to speak, of the fact that the labels are not providing this anymore. So now the artists have to come up with it. And then all of a sudden that's a real burden. But then as technology starts to make it easier, all of a sudden, and this is my favorite part of this whole thing, the artist, it kind of democratizes the whole thing. The artist gets to own their content. The artist gets to direct their creativity. And if they get that fan base, that's huge. That's a whole paradigm shift.
I don't want to take us off course, obviously, but I do think it's funny what you bring up, because from the artist side and from looking at, look, our core, outside of the artist making what they love, which is making music, we have to figure out how do we continue to build business around this and make the revenue so we can sustain what we had when the music industry was good, right? So, and go beyond that and become people like Jay-Z, etc. But what's so interesting about what you're saying is with the John Mayer piece and the 27 cameras, like, that's insane, sick, heightened experience. And that's where I really think we're leaving. Like, right now we're in the branded content space, but it's when John Mayer can capitalize on that, and you're paying, you're going into John Mayer's world, and that really is the John Mayer network. That's the next evolution of this, and that's where I think in 2, 3, 4, 5 years we start talking less about the brands, more about like what's the Republican Bill O'Reilly, what's the guy who has the paper, Glenn Beck, like the Glenn Beck model, right? That's the next phase of this whole thing, where we are less talking about brands. We're just talking about how impressive and how amazing the experience the artist is creating and the fact that people are ready to pay for it.
So let's bring this back to the technology platform. So I mean, the brands, they're sometimes successfully, sometimes less successfully, like teaming up with the artist to create this great piece of content. If you're not giving away socks, and you're creating digital content or film or music, then obviously you need to target that audience that you're looking for. And you mentioned social. You need to make that social to get attention. It seems different from the classic advertising where it's like, okay, I know I'm going to buy the audience that's watching this thing or listening to this show on the radio. So how do you, when you've created this branded content, like what's the next step, and how are the technology platforms helping that? Do you just have to be interesting, or are there certain things you can do?
So yeah, I mean, YouTube for film is really the natural thing. Right now, for music, you know, there's so many different players that are kind of coming up, and we're trying to figure out who's, you know, we're experimenting on all of them. It's never kind of gone are the days that you could have something really cool and you could throw it out on the internet and be like, ooh, I hope it works. Because no one's spending millions of dollars to create content, or even, you know, tens of thousands of dollars to create content and then just hoping it works. There's so many things out there. It's like you gotta be smart about it. We have a very special secret sauce, but it involves, and I say secret sauce because I don't really know all the details of it, but it involves creating blogger partnerships, and then working with those blogger partnerships to kind of start a fire and let them kind of get and spread your message out there and spread your content out there. Is that what you're asking? Like something like that? Because I mean, the thing is, when you do it that way, you have to, again, make sure that your stuff is cool, because it's like nobody wants to be the editor or the blogger that's kind of talking about is being a shill for something. You have to make sure that whatever you've got is worthwhile and that there's a real value for the audience.
Yeah. Anyone else to contribute on that question? So I mean, how, like, once you have the marriage of the artist and the brand, like how are you utilizing the technology platforms to get that content to resonate with audiences?
You know, I mean, I think you're right. I think it's YouTube. It really is. It's putting those together and putting out that piece. I mean, obviously SoundCloud's a good example of it. YouTube. I mean, just taking the product and then seeding it virally. I mean, for us, we have such a massive social media following that, you know, we can usually spark it ourselves, and then hopefully it gets the media pickup and all that, and hopefully it's good enough that it rises above all the, you know, hopefully it's the Harlem Shake, right?
Yeah. And what about, I mean, other platforms, so, you know, Twitter, Tumblr, Facebook?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, certainly Twitter or Tumblr, they you know, you don't turn up and traditionally advertise. There's this kind of notion of promoted content. Is that a good thing, or?
Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of success on Twitter, especially with promoted trends. It's amazing if you put the right trend up there, how it can get picked up, and we've seen trends that we put on there for brands kind of live for days beyond the promoted trend. And also promoted tweets and things like that. Twitter is like crazy ass warfare. If anybody's ever been on, like, seen it, like, you basically put your thing up there and then everybody tries to hijack it. I've been watching it. It's terrifying. It makes me nervous. But there's people that get really excited about being a part of that. But one great thing is, I mean, Snoop has a great following, and when you're a brand and you can find someone who has a great following already, then you can kind of tap into their Twitter following or their YouTube following. We actually had in our last social film a guy named Matthew Gray Gubler, which you guys may not know. He's in Criminal Minds. We actually had him as just one of the actors in it. He has like 300,000 raging female teeny bopper followers who love him, and they went bazonkers, and they totally, he tweeted about it, and they were like, oh my god, Matthew Gray Gubler. And I swear we had like millions of views on our thing just from Matthew Gray Gubler fans, and you know, it was amazing. So when you have the power of someone who has a great social media following and you involve them in your content, an artist or an actor, then it can really make it sing.
Funny little side note, you know who really benefits from Snoop's tweets is Waffle House. I'm not joking. Like, we
Do you get money?
I wish we got money. I've tried to call him a bunch of times. If it happens to be like, I don't know, probably between 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. and whatever coast it is, and we tweet something like, you know, just puffed and want a waffle or something, Waffle House will be the #1 trending topic. And that, what does that go for now? $200,000, $300,000?
It is. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I can literally predict when IHOP, Waffle House, or something like that will benefit. Actually, that brings me to another point. Speaking of branded content and how you sort of deliver it, we did something called Pocket Like It's Hot, love it or hate it, and it was.
I loved it.
Yeah, thank you. Pocket Like It's Hot. If you don't know, there was a song called Drop It Like It's Hot, and some young creative probably was sitting in an office one day and goes, Pocket Like It's Hot. And somehow they sold it through the Nestle chain of command, which is a pretty conservative brand company, and they were like, let's do it. And what I've found out since then is that Hot Pocket's a traditionally soccer mom brand, but in today's evolving media and niche audiences, they go, no, like, let's focus on who really buys Hot Pockets. And that's a Snoop fan, and that's a kid who's playing Xbox, who's probably, you know, whatever, and wants a Hot Pocket. So what do? You get Snoop Dogg to remix Pocket Like It's Hot. And actually I hung up the phone when they called me on that, but they were serious, and we got it together. So, you know, I guess the point I'm trying to make is in this evolving world, like leaving this sort of who you're supposed to market, and like you have to, and it's bad if you market to this audience that really buys your product. They did it, and social media was how to become a success, and that was one of the, I think YouTube named it like the top 10 branded videos of the year last year.
And so I wanted to leave some time for questions from the audience, but just before we wrap up, maybe we could go down the line and just get one really great example where artists, brands, and technology have come together, and one where it's been a disaster.
I'll go after James.
Okay, so I think a good example, I don't know if you guys have seen this one out there, but Carter Beauford, the drummer for the Dave Matthews Band, stuck a camera in his mouth and started, you know, one of his incredible solos. And it's just kind of mind-blowing to be Carter Beauford for a minute and see what it's like to play drums like that. So I would say that that was a successful kind of like point of view of what it's like to be a major artist. And I think a failure, just from my perspective in the camera world, is putting a camera kind of up in the corner and expecting that the like magical filmmaker is going to show up and make magic for you. I think that ends up looking like a surveillance camera, which can be a cool effect. But, those would be my two.
Anyone want to jump in next?
Pocket Like It's Hot.
One bad one, or was that the bad one?
Both.
Jamie?
I really liked, it's like with a band that I worked with, I had mentioned before, but I really liked what Chevy Sonic had done with the OK Go car to make the music video out of track out of car parts. That was awesome. Chevy Sonic did it, right? Yes, they did. And so I thought that was pretty bitching because it was like, it was just all made out of car. It was hypnotic. And also Pocket Like It's Hot. And I'm sorry. And then bad, you know, I don't know. I mean, I think it's anything where the brand didn't take enough credit for it and it was completely overlooked.
I think, I don't want to say bad, but one that I thought was transparent was, there was a couple years, maybe a year ago, 2 years ago, there was like a Gummy Bears Method Man, Redman video. And I had such high hopes for it, you know, I'd heard about it, I'm like, this is awesome, Gummy Bears, Method Man, Redman, makes a lot of sense. Or actually, maybe just Method Man. When I saw it, it was like, it was a gummy bear just like doing the cliche like b-boy poses and Method Man rapping. It was just like a joke. But anyway, that would be my not great one. And I think from a great one, I mean, you know, I really like like I said, I really like the Beck stuff that just came out. I think, you know, I think that Urban Outfitters, and I didn't even, actually no, Red Bull, amazing. The Red Bull Music Academy, and this like, the fact of the matter that they're putting out really amazing content. It'll get 30,000 hits on YouTube, but it doesn't matter. Like, there's just so much of it, and there's so much of a story, and you really forget what Red Bull is selling you, and you're just like, I want to go and tune into it. So I think they're just knocking it out of the park.
And I think that has to do with the quality, because I think Red Bull, that's what I think that's what defines them. Everything they do is quality, so I think it goes back to the brand. This is a quality brand.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like that's kind of an overriding theme. You know, this is something interesting for brands. It's something interesting for technology and the artist. But it has to be about the quality. It has to be authentic, good content, and that's when the three really play well together.
I guess it's quality or that access on the other side. It doesn't have to be the most amazing looking quality,
so
but if the access is so. It's almost like you're there with them, like you were just saying, like putting the camera in his mouth. I mean, it's either that access or the quality has to be.
Yeah. Cool. Right. Okay, so any questions? I think we have someone with a mic.
Nick.
Hello?
It is working. Okay. So Nick with a K, you had mentioned that revenue is essentially the backbone of the industry because you're running a business at the end of the day. And what kind of tools whether it be social media tools, technology, what kind of tools are you using today to help drive ticket sales, to help drive revenue at the end of the day?
Well, I mean, you know, I think a big focus on e-commerce now, trying to figure out ways. You know, I think Topspin's an amazing platform. I mean, as they evolve, you know, what they just did, what I've seen them do recently of how they're packaging screening experiences, intimate experiences, selling not just a traditional ticket to a show, but selling like, you know, one-of-a-kind products that the artist touches for a premium value. I mean, you know, obviously it's scalable, right? With a bigger artist and someone like Snoop, you can do all types of things to drive revenue, whether it's Twitter, paid tweets, and you know the likes, right? But when it's a smaller kind of a startup artist, it's looking for platforms like, you know, I just learned of one out of San Francisco called We Demand, or a crowdsourcing concert app out of Brazil called Coremos, where you know you're using these tools to like get your niche audience of fans to get together and book you and sell out the show. You know, I saw this group Bad Bad Not Good just did it in Boston, and like they're not a huge group, and I don't think they would normally sell out like they might think they sell at the Roxy, I don't know, but in Boston they just used this platform. Coremos, it's called something else here.
Is that the one they use in Brazil? That's the one.
Yeah, that's the one in Brazil.
That's so cool.
So they're basically, it's like the Kickstarter of music, right? So they're getting together, the people who raise the initial funds get their name on the poster that's promoting the show, like at the bottom. They get their actually to enter for free because the show sold out, so their money comes back to them as the initial who got the core guarantee down. So it's like that's kind of how we're looking at it. We're looking at new things, and we're using e-commerce just on the larger artists to really sell really good products, as opposed to just, hey, buy the t-shirt for $30.
And something that we're seeing a lot at the Roxy is kind of what you were just talking about. This band Emblem 3 is playing, I think, this weekend. And they sold out. They had a $20 ticket. And then they came back and did a $75 VIP experience meet and greet with the band. They actually made, and they didn't even involve us. Well, I'm dealing with that separately, but it's not funny. And they sold tickets for $75 and sold out in 30 seconds, and they sold 400 of them. And so there is this whole another level, and it goes back to what we were talking about earlier with the access, because anybody can see, not anybody can see the show, but can you meet them? Can you shake their hand? Can you take a picture with them? So it's kind of it's evolving the connection with the brand or the artist.
Cool. Any other questions? We've got one at the front here.
This is, I guess, for the whole panel. You guys touched on Red Bull, but a brand like Red Bull that actually creates platforms for artists versus a brand like Skype, who's one of your brands that kind of just does these one-offs and pours millions of dollars into a one-off event, versus a brand like Red Bull that will spend the same millions to actually put a band on the road, Red Bull Records and everything else they do around it. Like, how do you guys feel, you as some of the people that are in charge of that, how do you feel about suggesting to Skype to do a one-off event concert, or suggesting to Red Bull, hey, give us money and we'll actually pump you for 2 years, 10 years for your loyalty and building a brand?
I mean, I guess I guess it has to. It was a case-by-case basis, because it would come down to, like, is it a good thing for the brand? Is it a good thing for the artist? And is it a good thing for the audience? I mean, I think one of the things I think about a lot is the audience, just in my day-to-day, and whether or not the audience will benefit. Now, obviously, if it's a new artist, or we're creating a platform where we bring new artists up, then I think it's in the end good for everybody. But you know, I was talking to these guys before. It's like, I think the majority of work that most branded content has been in film, and I think the reason why for that is because it's more natural for both marketers and ad agencies to go into film, just by virtue of they're used to doing commercials. It's an easier get. YouTube's been established for that. I think there's a huge frontier in music, and we have just yet to scratch the surface of what we can do. One of the things we're working on right now is a social music video with Snoop. what else can we do where we can kind of use music as a way to connect with people? So maybe there is something in the future about creating a longer term thing with Skype. I don't know. It just really depends on what the idea is and how sustainable it is.
Yeah, Nick, you brought up the Red Bull example. I mean, when is it right for a brand to invest in something that's kind of, a long-term investment in something versus just doing a one-off, to promote a product or gain attention for one moment?
Well, I think, like you said, the idea, but I think it's a great way to do it. If you're gonna, it's a huge investment. I mean, like Mountain Dew did it early with the Green Label sound, which I thought was great because they signed some really cool artists early. Like, guys who now are big exposure. And I mean, Red Bull is just like going back to them. I mean, that's just the amount of money that they spend. I mean, the fact is they're a business about creating content as much as they're a business about creating beverages. And if you're a brand that's going to be able to do that and have that kind of foresight, and you have the money to sustain that, then I'm for that all day.
And they stuck with it. I mean, AWOL Nation isn't a perfect example of a band that didn't happen right away, and it took probably 4 years that they stuck with that band, kept putting them out on the road, and now they're finally getting that back. And I don't even think they want to get it back in terms of they want to make money on that. They want to put that back in, and it's an ad at the end of the day.
I mean, the other concern is, one thing that we're all obsessed with, all of us in this room, is doing something that's never been done. So there would have to be a very different point of view or perspective that one of our brands could take, that's something that Red Bull hasn't done, in order for it to make sense. Because there's no use being constantly, every article that's ever written about that will be, so-and-so brands riffing off of what Red Bull did. It's never good for a brand to do that.
Okay. Yeah, down the front.
I think this is a question for Jamie.
Yeah.
Do you think that branded content that's film-based can be very successful strictly in social, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, or do you think it needs to also go along with a big media buy, RollingStone.com or some other big media channel where you have to pay a lot of money to get those guaranteed eyeballs?
You can be successful without any media spend, but it's really difficult. I think you'd have to involve some pretty big artists who have big social media pull that can do that, but then that costs money. I think one thing that is the worst thing in the world is I've seen a lot of people just spend so much money on putting something out that never gets seen, and I think that what's very fascinating is the model used to be spend 20% on production and 80% on media. That was when it was TV. That was what the model was. As we move into branded content, it's moving towards more a 50-50 or even an 80-20. It's not gone that far, but 50-50 production, 50 on media. Because we can make our money work pretty smart. You don't have to spend, the amount of eyeballs you can get comparatively in branded content versus a traditional campaign it's a fraction of the cost. It is a fraction of the cost. And you're getting much more quality engagement. People are volunteering to watch it. It's pass-along value. And when you add a social layer in, where it's, for example, like on this last one we just did, we had a guy who woke up every day. The film was about a guy who woke up every day looking like a different person. He was the same person on the inside, but he looked different on the outside. And he fell in love with a girl. And it starred Topher Grace and Mary Elizabeth Winstead. It was directed by Drake Doremus, who's a Sundance Grand Jury Prize winner. And what we were able to do, because he looked different every day, was let the audience play him. Anybody in the audience, old, young, anybody could play him because he looked different every day. And they would make a web journal on his Toshiba laptop with Intel inside, and then that became part of the film. So when you did that, you open the door, and that's that access too. It's the access to the content and being part of being a co-creator. So I do think you do need, I do quite honestly think you need a media buy, but I think it is such a small percentage of what it would be if you would try to get the same result in a traditional campaign.
Cool, I think we've got time for maybe 2 more questions. So right at the back there.
Hi, my question is from the perspective of a new startup who is in the music content space, still not really having many visitors or audience, but is building that. What recommendations or advice can you give to startups who are looking to partner with brands to create branded content to ultimately generate advertising revenue, but don't yet have the audience? Can you think of any strategies that might be successful as you're building the audience?
What does it do? Can you tell us what it does?
In this case, it's actually a curated music video site with original programming. So MTV of 2013, which is actually online on all connected devices, truly MTV, unlike MTV of today. So playing music television.
I think that's kind of one of the dilemmas, right? If you're a startup, you need the brands involved to kind of generate like a revenue or a business model, but you're not quite big enough for someone. I mean, how do you? Well, I mean, anyone can answer.
What we found at GoPro is, I mean, the way we encourage people to use our cameras. So we say if you make 100% GoPro video, and it's badass, we will push it. So that's an opportunity to get your video seen. And what we found is that so much creativity is coming out of the woodworks, essentially, around that concept. So I would encourage you to make videos using GoPro cameras, but also plug. But also I think that consistency. I think that what I've seen out on the web is that a lot of people are flocking towards the sites that they know consistently put out good content.
And Jamie, I mean, if someone from a startup walks into your agency and says, hey, we'd love for brand X, we want some of Skype's money, what do they have to do? Is it figures? Is it audience? Is it innovation? What do they need to put in front of you?
So I would say, this is what I would say to you as a very specific piece of advice. I would look at who's doing work that you think is exciting. And this is just from my perspective. I would look at what branded content agencies and ad agencies are doing really interesting work from your perspective. Then I would find out who their digital media people are, or their digital strategists are. Then I would be very creative about talking to those people. And then and making sure you get in front of them and show them what your platform can do. Make them evangelists for your platform. They'll go to their creative department. I'm just telling you, this is how it works in our agency. They'll go to their creative department and they'll say, dudes, have you seen this cool shit? Look at this cool shit. What could we do with this cool shit for one of our current brands that we have? Mattel, Scrabble, Lego, Skype. What could we do for those brands? Could you think of something? And then the creatives think about that. Then we go and pitch it to the client. And then you have someone who's willing to put money in promoting something interesting that's happening on your platform. That's what I would probably do. It's always going to be a long shot because there's a lot of competition for creating interesting ideas on different platforms. But if it were me and that was my startup, knowing the way our agency works, I would call Josh Brandow in my agency and say, hey, I've got this cool thing. What do you think, and what could we do with it?
Take a few points, put them to the side, give a little bit to the artists you really want on the platform. A little bit goes a long way. You can dilute the company later anyway.
Cool, okay, I think we have run out of time on that note. So, yeah, I wanted to give, if everyone could give the panelists a big round of applause. I'm sure a few of us will hang around for a few minutes afterwards if you want to come up as well. Thank you.